She ran away with another man, but what followed broke her entire family. The sun rose slowly over the village of Lambi. Its light spilled over the red clay huts and the small garden patches where women tended cassava and maize. Birds called softly in the trees while the river whispered over smooth stones. Smoke rose from the cooking fires and children wandered barefoot along narrow paths. The village moved in its gentle rhythm, every sound familiar and comforting. In one small compound, a woman named Naliwe stirred porridge over a low fire. Her husband, Bantu, was still asleep under the shade of a baobab tree. He had labored the previous day in the fields, and the night had been long with worry over the dry season. Naliwe had been married to him for 8 years. She had grown accustomed to the quiet predictability of this life, but her heart often wandered beyond the river, past the hills, where traders from the city passed through once a month. The village knew hardship intimately. Water was scarce during the dry months, and the rains never came on schedule. Families shared what little they had. Gossip traveled faster than the river's current, and every action was noted and remembered. Even small secrets had a way of becoming public knowledge over time. One afternoon, a man arrived at the village, carrying the dust of the road on his worn sandals. He was a trader from the city named Mbale. His presence stirred curiosity and unease. His clothes were cleaner than most had ever seen in Lambi. He spoke of markets where silver coins were exchanged and where the roads were lined with goods from distant lands. Naliwe watched him from the shadows as he set down his wares under the large mango tree near the village center. Her heart, long dulled by the monotony of her life, felt a pull she could not name. Days passed and Mbale lingered longer than most traders. He spoke to Naliwe in quiet tones, asking questions about the village, about her family, about herself. Bantu noticed little at first, distracted as he was with tending his fields. The women in the village whispered, watching the slow change in Naliwe's eyes. They noticed her laughter arriving more easily, her hands brushing against the traders as if drawn by invisible threads. As the weeks moved on, Naliwe's visits to Mbale became more frequent. She began walking to the river later in the evenings, claiming she went to fetch water or to tend the garden. In truth, she met him under the baobab trees where no one ventured after sunset. Their conversations were careful and deliberate. Mbale spoke of wealth, of life beyond the red clay huts, of a home with solid walls and a market where fruit could be bought rather than grown with aching hands. Naliwe listened with growing desire, feeling the village walls close in around her. Bantu worked from sunrise until the sun dipped low, unaware at first of the change that had settled like a shadow over his home. He trusted Naliwe, as he had always done, yet he felt the subtle chill in her voice and the way her eyes drifted when he spoke. His friends in the village tried to warn him, saying women sometimes wandered like the rivers after heavy rains, seeking something more than the life offered by the soil. But Bantu did not want to believe it. One morning, Naliwe left the hut before dawn. She did not wake Bantu. She did not leave a word. Only the faint scent of soap and smoke lingered where she had once slept. By midday, the village had noticed. Children whispered among the mango trees. The women gathered at the well, exchanging glances that were heavy with judgment. Bantu returned from the fields to find the compound empty, the porridge cold on the fire. Days turned to weeks. Mbale had taken Naliwe to the city, where streets shimmered with lights and voices were louder than the river. Bantu remained in Lambi, working the land and speaking little to anyone. The village judged him silently, their eyes carrying both pity and quiet scorn. Life continued in its slow rhythm, but the emptiness in Bantu's compound was palpable. Naliwe's absence created a shift that rippled through the village. Her parents sat quietly in their hut, shaking their heads, recalling the promises she had made. The children she had played with no longer ran to her side. Every market day reminded them of the woman who had left, her laughter now only a memory carried by the wind. In the city, Naliwe's life with Mbale was not the dream she had imagined. The streets were loud, the markets were crowded. The house he had promised was not as solid or as warm as he described. Her days became filled with errands, chores, and social obligations she had not anticipated. She felt the pull of Lambi in the quiet hours of the night. She remembered the river, the clay huts, the smell of firewood and fresh maize. She remembered the slow rhythm of life that had comforted her even when it bored her. Time moved in the city, but the heart of the village moved at its own pace. Seasons passed, rain fell and crops grew. Embil spoke less to Naliwe over the years. His promises of wealth faded like the dust of the roads he traveled. Naliwe felt the weight of her choices pressing on her chest. The city offered plenty, but not the quiet warmth she had abandoned. Rumors began to reach Lombi of troubles in the city, a scandal that shook Embil's standing. People whispered that Naliwe had returned, that she had come back to her parents' hut. The village held its breath. Mothers called their children in early. Elders stopped their gossip at the market. The air carried an unfamiliar tension. What would the village do with a woman who had left? Banda remained in the fields, his back bent over cassava and maize, unaware of the whispers that had begun to coil around his home. He felt the quiet shift in the wind. Something was coming, something that might not be reversed by time or prayer. The day Naliwe returned to Lombi arrived with the soft heat of late morning. She stepped off the worn path that led to the village, her sandals carrying dust from the distant city. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to appear steady. The elders sat under the large mango tree at the center of the village, their eyes narrowing as she drew near. Children, curious but cautious, lingered behind their mothers. The wind carried a faint scent of smoke and soil. Naliwe's parents opened their hut quietly. They did not speak immediately. They only watched her, noting the change in her gait and the weariness around her eyes. It was a slow recognition, the understanding that the child they had once held in their arms had grown into someone who had carried both desire and regret through the years. She bowed her head, words lost in her throat. The village waited in silence. Banda was the first to see her from the fields. He was bent over the cassava, hands darkened by soil, and for a long moment he did not move. His chest felt tight. The sun was hot on his shoulders, and he did not notice it. Naliwe stood on the narrow path, her shadow stretching toward him. He knew her immediately, though her hair was different, her clothes unfamiliar. His lips parted, but no sound came. The village elders slowly approached, forming a circle around her. Their faces were solemn. They did not raise voices. They did not shout. Their presence alone carried the weight of judgment. Naliwe lowered her eyes, feeling it all, the eyes of women who had once shared gossip at the well, the children who had remembered her laughter, the men who had tilled the soil beside Bantu. She felt the village breathing around her like the slow pulse of a river. She tried to speak, but the first words came in a whisper. She told them of the city, of the promises that had never been kept, of Embil's decline and the scandal that had left her with nothing but memories. The villagers listened. Some nodded, some shook their heads. The women murmured quietly among themselves. The elders remained still, faces carved with lines that had seen decades of lives bending under sun and rain. Banda did not speak. He lowered his eyes to the soil and ran his hand over the dry leaves of cassava. His mind replayed years of waiting, of silent nights, of meals eaten alone. He felt the quiet weight of betrayal, but also the soft pulse of longing he had buried deep inside himself. Naliwe stood a few steps away, hands folded, sensing the fragile space between them. The village did not offer immediate forgiveness. That was not the way of Lombi. They spoke in measured tones, reminding her of the bonds she had broken. A woman does not abandon her home lightly. A man does not toil alone while his wife walks away. Words were heavy but calm. They spoke of respect, of trust, of the seasons that had passed without her presence. Naliwe listened, each word landing softly but sharply in her heart. She returned to her parents' hut that evening. The fire was small and the air smelled of cooking maize and beans. Her mother placed a bowl of porridge before her. She ate slowly, the taste unfamiliar yet comforting. Outside, the village moved in its slow rhythm. Children ran past, their laughter hesitant. The river shimmered under the moonlight, carrying the sounds of frogs and insects. Naliwe lay awake, listening to it all, feeling the weight of what she had left behind. Banda walked past the compound without looking. He went to the edge of his fields and watched the horizon. The sun had set and the sky glowed in gentle hues. He thought of Naliwe, of the life that could have been, of the love that had been fractured but still lingered like smoke over dry leaves. He did not know if he could forgive. He only knew that the village had eyes and ears everywhere, and the story of her return would ripple like wind through the leaves of every mango tree. Over the next days, Naliwe tried to reclaim small pieces of her life. She visited neighbors, apologized quietly, listened to stories of what had changed while she was away. She noticed small things. She had never paid attention to the children's games, the way the elders shared wisdom in hushed tones, the rhythm of work and rest that had kept the village alive for generations. Each step she took was careful. She did not wish to repeat the mistakes that had driven her from home. The elders, however, were watchful. They asked her to prove her intentions through action. She fetched water for the elders, tended gardens, helped carry food to those who struggled. She moved slowly in the village, learning the new patterns and respecting the old ones. The women observed her, some offering quiet guidance, others only wary looks. The children approached when their mothers nodded. Life was returning to its rhythm, but the tension lingered like dust in the wind. Bandu remained a silent presence. He worked beside others in the fields, spoke little, watched carefully. Sometimes he would glance at Naliwe from a distance. She noticed and lowered her eyes. Their shared past was not something easily erased. Their conversations were minimal. She offered small gestures of cooperation and care, but he received them quietly, as if measuring whether the bridge between them could ever hold weight again. The village watched closely. They understood that life could not be rushed. A woman's return was not only a question of her own heart but of the balance in the community. Trust once broken was slow to heal. They whispered about Naliwe but also about the strength it took to return. They remembered the days she had left and the years Bantu had waited silently. There was no anger in the wind, only the patient pulse of observation and time. Naliwe learned the names of new children who had been born while she was away. She remembered neighbors who had aged, houses that had shifted, the river's slow expansion into new channels. Each day she moved among these changes with care. She cooked, carried, and worked quietly. Every action was a test not just for her but for the village that had witnessed her absence. Bandu noticed her diligence but remained careful. There was a distance between them, measured not in meters but in moments, in glances, in silence. Sometimes he would speak about work or the weather, always practical, never emotional. Naliwe listened, understanding that rebuilding a life required patience, not speech. The village observed them both. They understood that love could not be summoned with words alone. Evenings brought long shadows and the soft hum of cicadas. Naliwe sat by the river, watching the reflection of trees in the water. She thought of the city, of Mbale, of the life she had sought. She felt the pull of her past decisions, but also the grounding weight of home. Bandu worked nearby, his figure outlined by the fading sun. Their lives were intertwined by history and circumstance, but separated by choices. Life in Lombi continued in quiet layers of activity. The children laughed and cried. Women carried firewood. Men tilled the soil. Naliwe moved among them like a shadow seeking sunlight. She spoke little, but listened carefully. The village offered her no applause, no welcome banners, only careful observation, only the steady pulse of everyday life. Each step she took was measured, each action carried weight. The mornings in Lombi carried a soft golden light that touched the red clay paths and the roofs of thatched huts. Naliwe rose early as she always had, though her movements were quieter now. She swept the compound, tended small gardens, and fetched water from the well. Each act was deliberate. She was aware of the villagers' eyes but tried not to meet them too directly. The rhythm of the day was slow and steady. Bandu worked in the fields near the river. He rose before sunrise and returned after the sun had climbed high. He had grown leaner during the years she was gone, but his hands were still strong and capable. He spoke little to anyone, moving through his work as if the soil itself could carry his emotions. Sometimes he glanced at Naliwe, measuring the distance between the past and what remained now. The elders met under the largest baobab in the village to discuss the balance of the community. They spoke quietly of Naliwe's return and the impact her absence had left behind. They recalled her laughter, the weight of her departure, and the slow adjustments the village had made in her absence. They knew she had come back seeking what she had abandoned. The question was whether the village would allow her the space to rebuild her place. Naliwe approached them carefully. She offered help where she could, listened when they spoke, and did not interrupt. She brought firewood and water, tended the children who ran errands for their parents, and assisted women in carrying bundles of cassava to the market. Every day she moved slowly, learning the new rhythm, observing changes. The villagers measured her patience, her humility, and her willingness to accept the quiet work of the community. Bandu did not speak much to Naliwe. His eyes sometimes betrayed a quiet hurt, a reminder of the nights he had spent waiting, the loneliness of meals eaten alone, the silence that had followed her departure. When they worked near each other, he acknowledged her presence with a nod but nothing more. The gap between them felt solid and deep, yet neither could deny the shared history that lingered like smoke over the village paths. Weeks passed and the rhythm of the village moved on. Children learned lessons from elders about the land, about patience, about community bonds. Naliwe observed them from a distance, sometimes joining in with chores or listening to stories of the elders. She remembered the days she had left, the hours she had wasted chasing a life that had only offered fleeting promises. She felt the gentle pull of home and the slow forgiveness of the earth beneath her feet. The villagers began to notice small changes in her. She laughed quietly at children's stories, carried water without complaint, and worked in the fields alongside Bantu when needed. The elders nodded in approval during their quiet meetings. They did not offer her open praise but accepted her presence as part of the village fabric once more. Trust was not restored in a single day. It was woven slowly through small actions, patience, and shared labor. One afternoon, as the sun lowered toward the hills, Naliwe went to the river to wash the day's work from her hands. Banda came behind her with a bundle of maize stalks. He did not speak. He only moved with a steady pace, laying the stalks near the drying racks. The river's current carried the sound of flowing water and the distant calls of birds. Naliwe watched the reflection of the sky in the rippling water. She remembered her father's voice, her mother's advice, and the gentle lessons of village life that had always surrounded her. Time in Lombi moved like the river itself. It was neither fast nor slow. Seasons changed and crops grew. Naliwe began speaking more with neighbors, laughing softly when appropriate, assisting families in their work, and offering small gestures of kindness. Each day added a new thread to the fragile tapestry she was rebuilding. The village, cautious but observant, began to include her in small decisions and community tasks. Bandu's feelings remained complex. The wound of abandonment had not disappeared. Some nights he lay awake, listening to the sounds of the village, recalling the years of loneliness. Yet he also noticed Naliwe's diligence, her quiet remorse, and the subtle care she now offered. He remained distant but attentive. Their shared history moved between them in silent threads, fragile but persistent. The children were the first to forgive her fully. They ran to her side, asking questions about the city, about her experiences, about the stories she had brought back. She answered carefully, avoiding the embellishments of pride or sorrow. The elders noticed this and allowed her closer to the center of village life. Her parents watched with quiet relief. They did not speak much, but their eyes carried the understanding that Naliwe had come back to stay and had accepted the hard work of repair. Evenings in Lombi were calm and filled with soft sounds. Fires burned low. Women sang quietly as they prepared meals. The river whispered over stones. Children ran barefoot under the last light of day. Naliwe sat outside her parents' hut, sometimes speaking to Bantu when necessity required it. The words were few but deliberate. The air carried patience, reflection, and the weight of past mistakes slowly softening under the rhythm of daily life. Naliwe's return also brought questions of trust and loyalty among the villagers. Some women whispered quietly by the well about her choices. Some men measured Bantu's responses carefully. Life did not rush forward. Every step was cautious, every gesture measured. Naliwe understood this and accepted it, knowing that the village had been the patient witness to her departure and would not forgive. Quickly, months passed and life continued. Naliwe contributed steadily, learning more about the community she had abandoned. She remembered names, the history of each family, and the delicate balance of relationships. Bandu observed quietly, offering assistance when needed but never overstepping the boundaries of caution. Their shared labor began to rebuild a form of connection, though it was not yet comfort or love. It was recognition, measured and deliberate, like the slow growth of cassava in the sun. One day, the elders called Naliwe and Bantu to the center of the village. They spoke of responsibility, of the importance of family bonds, and of the lessons learned from absence and return. They did not shout. They did not condemn. Their words carried calm authority, reminding both of the quiet strength required to live in a community that measured every action and every choice. Naliwe and Banta listened, understanding that the path forward required patience, humility, and steady presence. As the evening settled over Lambi, Naliwe, and Bantu worked side by side in the fading light. They spoke little. They did not rush. They moved with the rhythm of the village, each step a silent acknowledgement of the past and a careful consideration of the future. The river whispered nearby. Children ran past, laughing softly. The village breathed around them, carrying both memory and hope in equal measure. The following months in Lambi settled into a slow and steady rhythm. Naliwe rose each morning with the first light. She carried water from the well, swept the compounds, and worked in the small gardens near her parents' hut. Her hands were calloused again from labor, but the effort grounded her. The village watched quietly, noting every gesture, every careful step she took. They were neither hostile nor fully trusting. Their observation was patient and deliberate. Banda remained near his fields, bending over cassava and maize, his presence steady and reserved. He spoke little, only what necessity demanded. Yet he watched her with cautious attention. Sometimes their eyes met briefly across the drying yards or under the shade of the mango tree. Each glance was a silent negotiation between past hurts and present obligations. Neither rushed forgiveness, neither demanded it. They moved like two branches slowly growing toward each other. Naliwe began visiting the families she had once known. She assisted the women in preparing meals, helped with fetching water, and guided children learning to carry heavy bundles. She remembered each name and each small story. She carried herself humbly, mindful of the village's memory of her absence. Some nodded at her quietly, others simply observed, their eyes conveying silent questions that required time to answer. Banda began to notice subtle changes in her presence. Her hands moved with care in the fields. She spoke respectfully with elders. She carried out her duties without complaint. Her laughter, quiet and deliberate, reached the children, and they ran to her with trust restored slowly through repeated kindness. Banda measured her actions not by words but by consistency. Each day added a small weight of credibility to her return. The elders continued to meet under the great baobab. They discussed her presence calmly, considering the balance of the village and the integrity of family bonds. They spoke in measured tones of responsibility, of trust regained slowly, of the importance of observing her actions rather than her words. Naliwe listened quietly when invited, absorbing their guidance and understanding the village's rhythm. Over time, Bantu and Naliwe began working together. At first, the coordination was practical and silent. They tilled the soil side by side, prepared meals for neighbors who struggled, and assisted families with harvests. Their conversations were minimal, practical, and careful. Emotions were not expressed freely. They were contained and measured, carried in gestures rather than declarations. The village recognized these subtle movements as the beginning of restoration. The children were the first to bridge the distance. They ran to Naliwe when she appeared, asking questions, laughing at her small jokes, and seeking guidance in simple tasks. Her response was patient. She taught them, shared stories from the city with caution, and reinforced the daily lessons of village life. The elders observed this quietly, noting the delicate process of acceptance unfolding. Bandu's heart remained guarded. He worked with diligence and spoke rarely, yet he began noticing small gestures. Naliwe's attentiveness to tasks, her willingness to correct herself, and her respect for the community's customs were all visible. He began to speak to her in the evenings, initially about work, then about the slow rhythms of village life. These exchanges were simple and practical, but they carried the subtle weight of understanding. As seasons shifted, Naliwe and Bantu began to share quiet moments. They walked together to fetch water, shared small tasks in the fields, and carried loads side by side. Words remained few, but their presence near each other signified trust being rebuilt slowly. The village watched these developments with calm eyes. They did not offer accolades, only acknowledgement of effort. Restoration was measured in patience and visible action. Naliwe continued to honor the rhythm of the village. She respected its customs, its elders, and its routines. She participated in ceremonies, assisted during harvest, and learned from the wisdom of older women. The villagers saw a woman who had once abandoned her home now rooted in its reality. Her return was not romanticized. It was practical, careful, and grounded in consistent effort. Bantu, too, adjusted. He allowed himself small moments of acknowledgement, assisting her when needed, offering quiet guidance, and sharing tasks. He did not express anger openly, but carried the weight of past betrayal silently. Each day, Their shared labor became a bridge. The past lingered like a shadow, but was softened by the rhythm of work, care, and presence. The community around them began to accept her steadily. Gossip remained, but it was quieter. Neighbors noticed her patience, her steady presence, and her careful reintegration. Children sought her company. Elders nodded when she acted with diligence. Banda measured each day with cautious optimism. Naliwe's return was slowly transforming from a source of tension to a part of the ongoing life of the village. By the end of the year, Naliwe and Bantu had established a quiet understanding. They worked together, moved carefully within the village's rhythm, and respected one another's space. Their shared history remained, but it no longer dictated every moment. The village acknowledged her presence not through open praise but through acceptance of her consistent effort. Trust had been rebuilt slowly, patiently, like soil nurturing new crops after a long dry season. Evenings carried calm sounds. Fires burned low. Children played under mango trees. Women shared meals quietly. The river whispered near the edge of the fields. Naliwe and Bantu sat quietly together sometimes, not speaking, only moving in parallel with the rhythm of the village. Life had returned to its gentle pace. The lessons of absence, return, and patience were embedded in every glance, every gesture, and every shared labor. The village of Lombi breathed steadily. Naliwe had returned. She had rebuilt her life carefully. She had faced judgment and met it with humility. She had witnessed the patient work of trust and community and allowed herself to be restored slowly over time. Banda remained present, his heart still cautious but softened by her consistent presence. Life moved forward quietly, grounded in labor, observation, and the enduring rhythm of the village. The days grew long and gentle. The crops swayed under the wind. Children laughed without fear. Women worked together with quiet laughter. Men tilled the soil steadily. Naliwe moved among them, her steps measured, her presence grounded, her past woven carefully into the slow pulse of the village. Banda watched her sometimes and felt the quiet return of something familiar. The village no longer whispered only of betrayal. They whispered of patience, of perseverance, of the slow rebuilding of life through careful action. Naliwe had returned fully to the rhythm she had once abandoned. She had learned to measure her presence and had been measured in return. Life in Lombi continued in gentle cycles, each day carrying the lessons of absence, of loss, and of gradual restoration. The sun set over the red clay huts, and the river carried the soft evening sounds. Naliwe and Bantu worked together one last time that day, not speaking, only acknowledging each other through gestures and shared labor. The village moved around them in its steady pulse. The past remained, but it no longer ruled their every movement. Life continued, calm, measured, and deeply human. The story of her departure and her return became part of the quiet memory of Lombi. It was a story told in whispers and in observation. It was a story of patience, of choice, of human frailty, and of the careful rebuilding of trust. Naliwe remained in the village, not through declaration or celebration, but through quiet persistence, presence, and humility. The community accepted her slowly, and she became part of the ongoing rhythm of life once more. Her story was no longer one of abandonment alone. It had become a story of the slow, steady work of living, of repairing what had been broken, and of learning that the village, the land, and the people measured every action with patience and quiet understanding. The rhythm of Lombi carried her forward, her past, and her return folded into its gentle flow. The sun rose again over the village. Children ran to the river. Women carried bundles to the market. Men tilled the soil. Naliwe worked quietly among them. Banda was near, silent, and watchful. The village continued its steady life, the lessons of absence and return embedded in the soil, the water, and the hearts of those who had lived it. Trust had been rebuilt slowly, silently, and carefully. Life moved forward, gentle and enduring, carrying with it the quiet understanding that people could return, could repair, and could once more belong if they walked patiently with the rhythm of the land and the pulse of the village. The story of Naliwe and Bantu became part of Lombi's history, remembered not for the scandal or the betrayal, but for the measured restoration of life, love, and community. Naliwe left her humble village life for the promises of a wealthy city trader. Years later, a scandal forced her return, but the village she abandoned had changed. Her family and neighbors met her with quiet judgment and cautious eyes. Through patience, humility, and steady effort, she struggled to rebuild trust, navigate old wounds, and reclaim her place. This is a story of love, betrayal, and the slow human journey of redemption.